about 7 years, and that is how she met Ella's daddy.
Yes.
Ella is now 21. They moved to Carpinteria. And Virginia started her work in the nonprofit sector at the UCSB Women's Center in 1990, and then went on to work at the Rape Crisis Center and volunteered at the Helpline at Domestic Violence Solutions, where she later served on the board Go Jan Campbell.
Yay!
After that, she landed her dream job at Planned Parenthood in 1993, and she spent 20 years working her way. We have a lot of Planned Parenthood people, Planned Parenthood people. We need you now more than ever.
Hell yeah.
In those 20 years, she worked from the clinical service department to community educator, director, and finally as vice president. She retired in 2015 to spend more time with the love of her life, John Weigel, traveling, and that happened to be the year that he was also diagnosed with sarcoma. And the rest is her story to tell. But to that, I will add that Virginia is disarmingly honest. She is overwhelmingly generous. She is a person who unabashedly stands in her own truth, who listens deeply and always seeks to understand. She's also hilarious, original, curious, and just a bright, bright light in this world. I'm proud to call her my friend, Virginia Benson Weigel.
I hope I can live up to all that. I have my napkin here because I didn't bring my tissues. So, and I'm not wearing shoes because I don't care. I need to be grounded. And I just want to thank you all. First of all, I'm really nervous. I get terrible stage fright. Isn't that weird? I sang in a band and I get terrible stage fright. That doesn't make sense, but it should. I don't know why. Anyway, thank you so much for asking me to do this. I talk about John all the time. And I've never done this in front of a bunch of people, obviously. And I am really funny, but I do have my tears too. When Mary Beth asked me to do this, I thought, well, why is my story any different than anyone else's? I mean, my husband died. And it's not, but I also know that it's important to share a story because it might affect someone else and help someone who maybe doesn't want to talk about it, feels ashamed, feels, whatever they're feeling. And also I started a business called Our Story. So I ask for stories from other people. So if I can't tell my story, then that is a problem. So with that, I just want to also, before I always forget, this is terrible, to thank my daughter, Ella, who's the love of my life. And she has gone on this crazy journey with me. Loved John, and John loved her beyond words. And your support throughout everything has meant, you're basically why I'm still here. Not to put a lot of responsibility on you. So stay straight and be nice to people. Anyway, the one thing before I get started on our story is grief. And for me, grief will come up. I realized it was overwhelming when I went through it. My mom and dad have both passed. It's not the same thing as I felt when John died. And I had to learn how to live with it. And so there's a song, there's a lyric in a song from, I guess, like 20 years ago. And it was, "Fear is a friend that is misunderstood." And it helped me through a lot of times in my 20s and 40s when I felt like I couldn't do something. And so now I've replaced fear with grief. And I walk with grief as my friend. And what grief does for me, which you will see, it comes up in these moments, is I almost feel like this physical, like bringing me back to the present. which I tend to live in the future. And so I embrace my grief. I do it every day, sometimes multiple times a day. And sometimes people will say, oh my God, she's like not over it. I'm like, no, I'm never gonna be over it. This is a part of my life. So I just want to let you know that when this comes up, I just have to stand and gather my feeling, have grief gently bring me back to you, not get too far in the past, not go in the future, and it is a gift. So on that, I am going to start at the beginning. So it helps me to think of things in chapters. So there's 3 chapters that I'm going to tell you about today. The first one is the beginning, and I like to refer to it when I was seen. So John and I met in spin class, which is basically like high school with bicycles. And I thought he was this really nice old man, which I realize now I'm his age when he met me. And so I'm mortified. I kept going, God, you're like an old nice man. Like, what is this all about? I thought he was just kind of a funny little guy, and he's huge. He was 6'4". But we became very unlikely friends. And we started to look forward to see each other in spin class, which again sounds so stupid, but that's what it was. And we started having these conversations about life. And as we went deeper, he would ask me these questions, and we weren't in love yet. We were just friends. And we just started to reveal more and more about ourselves. And I have never been able to be so authentic within myself and share. I'm pretty insecure, and he just could hear my insecurities and love me for who I was. I was really hard then, I'm probably harder now, but I was so appreciative of being seen by him. And it was reciprocated. He loved being seen by me. And so one day, More Than a Feeling was playing by Boston, and I walk in the gym. The gym's kind of a central part of this. And he looked at me, he said, I have to tell you something. And I thought, oh God, whatever, what's gonna be weird? And he said, I'm in love with you. And I was like, holy shit. This is not good at all. That's so good. So happy. And it flipped. And I would have done anything for him, and he and I did anything for each other, which is a whole other story I'm going into now. And we saw each other. It was like, I've never felt that way, and I now feel that way because I hadn't felt that way beforehand. So that importance of seeing someone was so integral to our relationship that we went to see Avatar together, which is, it's really embarrassing that I'm admitting that I saw Avatar and did this afterwards. But like that whole part of I see you, we left that theater and stood on State Street like for about 5 minutes where people were like, can you get out of the way? Like, that's like not okay. You come out and you're crying and you're holding each other and shaking, and this is not okay. But there was something within I see you that was so important to us that he actually, when we went on our honeymoon, had these t-shirts made when I got there, and it said, I see you. And so for me to be seen has played a huge part in my life from that point forward, which will make more sense at the end. So the second chapter that we have had together is the middle and the end. That's what I like to consider it. And it's when we really hurt each other. So we started our lives together, and we blended our families. And John said one day, I want a mission statement with you. And I'm like, oh, what did I get into? Like a mission statement? I'm not going to work. I don't have another mission statement here. But it was really, really important to us to have a mission statement that started with, I hear you. And just, if we didn't hear each other, we would stop each other and say, if I'm going off on a, like for him on a tangent, which was normal for both of us, we would stop and say, I hear you and I see you. And we would come back to where we needed to be in our conversation. And we also had a morning ritual where we would get up and have coffee every morning and talk about all this, like, what is life all about? I know it gets really it was a really heavy thing for me too, first thing in the morning, but it became this thing of hearing each other and hearing our perspectives. It became just such a big part of our relationship. And then at night we'd have wine and we'd do the same thing, which was awesome. And in 2009, we started talking about this idea that we had about getting people's stories and keeping them in a vault, like a virtual vault, so you could share your story to your family. If you didn't, you'd will it to your family essentially, which I still think that's a really great idea, because not everybody wants to talk about what has been going on in their life. But I think I really wanted it because I had a family that didn't tell me the truth about a lot of stuff, and it was kind of up to me later on to piece it together. So I didn't want that for Ella. I wanted Ella to know my daughter, I wanted her to know every single bit about me, so she didn't hear it from someone else or have to try and piece it together. So this was in 2009, and it became like a weekly topic for us. But because we were so distracted with each other, we never really did anything about it. We just kept talking about it, which was a lot of ideas that we had. So fast forward to 2015. So we had a great life, everything was fine. 2015, John asked me to retire, and I was ready to retire from Planned Parenthood. And he started his dad started AGIA, and John took over, and he was ready to go into a different position. He was 19 years older than me, and so we knew we just needed to pack this stuff in. So I retired, and about a year later, I said, John, I'm really not that happy anymore. I'm not doing anything. I wear my workout clothes all day, and I think about what I'm doing for dinner, and I feel like I'm doing what I did when I had Ella, and so I can't do this anymore. And on September 13th, a week later, we got a call when we were sitting around the table with Ella that there was a shadow that he had in his spine from Ryan Nakasone. It was right before. The next day we were doing a wedding wedding party. So we get this news, we don't know what it is, but Ryan at 6 o'clock at night calls you and says, you need to go and see a doctor right away. And it was like all of the pieces in my world started to fall. But we didn't know what it was, but I didn't care. It was like, what I don't even know how, we run half marathons together, and he would have this referral pain, and I just thought it was his back. It was, he's 60, he was at that point 65, and he was totally healthy and vibrant. So there was something about it though that wasn't right. So we went to the doctor, and in January of 2017, he was diagnosed with a schwannoma, which is a slow-growing tumor in his back. They operated at UCLA, and the labs went to Mayo and to UCLA, and it was misdiagnosed again as schwannoma. So that was in January. In May, John couldn't walk. And we thought everything was fine until he couldn't walk. And so I said, it was a Saturday, go get an x-ray. So he went to get an x-ray, and he came back, and he said, I think there's been a mistake. They just told me that it's grown, it's twice its size. And I said, that's not possible. And then 2 days later, we went down to UCLA, and the doctor that performed his surgery, we were like joking all the way down, John and I, and we get to the office, and the doctor had reviewed the x-ray or MRI, and he looked at us and he goes, I don't know what to say. This is not a schwannoma. And that's when we left. I was driving, I pulled over to the side of the road, and we just both cried, because we knew. we knew that this was not going to end up well. So that's when it started. That's when that journey, where I did not know what to do. I would stay up every night and plead with him, just please don't die. Please don't die and leave me alone. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to do this. And for me to know that hospice counseling was available, for me to know that there were resources in the community that were available, I didn't want to use them because I was scared. But at least I knew that they were there for me. We decided not to tell anyone. So for a year, John, I think a lot of you know with cancer, you go through scans, go through chemo, you go through scans, you go through chemo, and all that time I had to pretend that everything was just fine, and I was good at pretending, but not that good. So eventually I just didn't go out anymore. Both of us were at home, which is the nicest thing in the world because I could be with him at the end. He did get me my dog Ziggy though in 2017. He's like the VIP of the family. He's the cutest dog. Many people I can't with him. We call him Chips. So in March of 2018, we had to get full-time care. Again, hospice was available to me. I chose not to do it because I didn't know how to deal with anything. I just was trying to get up every day. We had a baby monitor. You couldn't go downstairs anymore. And we had a trip to go to Spain, Ella and I, and John. On June 17th of 2018, he had a doctor come in the day we left for Spain. And he wanted us to go. And the doctor said to me something that I will cherish for the rest of my life because I never wanted to be a wife. I always thought that was so not feminist of anyone. So dumb. And John couldn't get out of the chair. He was getting these shots all down his back. He was just in horrible pain. We were holding each other's hand. We had our foreheads together. And the doctor said, "You are such a good wife." And for me, that, for the rest of my life, hopefully I'll take it on to my next life, that was like the golden thing to me. I remember that. I kind of do my meditation and I love to remember that feeling of like, okay, I've done it. And so we went to Spain. Of course, I didn't get any sleep at all. And it had been like 7 days. And then July 24th happened. And it was almost like this old movie, like a black and white movie. You get that call when you're on the train going to Barcelona from the nurse saying, "He's here." She kept kind of going along, and I said, in a very rational way, "So what you're saying is my husband is going to die today?" And she said, "Yes." And I said, "Okay," and I went into that mode. We need to get to the hotel. I need to call all of his friends. They need to say goodbye, and you need to keep him alive until I can do that. And we need to check in to get a room, because I'm not going to cry like this in the middle of the lobby of the hotel. And she said, "Okay." So Ellen and I called all of his friends. We went up to the bed. She said, "I can't hold it any longer." And right after I, take him off the machine, he's going to die. And I said, "Okay." And we laid down in the bed together, put the phone between our faces. And I would always say to him, "My love." And he would say, "Forever." That man, for a half an hour, lived to say, I would say, "My love," and in that rickety voice, he would say, "Forever." And he would say it over and over and over again. And the last word he said, and I swear to God, because Ella was there, is "our story." And I was like, "Mother, are you kidding me? Like, that's it? You want me to do this whole thing that we talked about in 2009? I remember getting off the phone with him, like, did he really say that? I can't believe it. But the thing that was so great about it And that moment of total pain is that I could see that he had set this plan out for me. So all those nights I was up pleading and asking, what am I gonna do? What am I gonna do? He had every single thing planned out for me. So after he passed, I went home with Ella, and there were way too many people in my house with family members. It's like after you have a baby and everybody wants to be there, and you're like, okay, enough. But my sister was there, and she would get me up out of bed and walk me. I don't even remember how I did it. They'd feed Ziggy. I don't remember the first 4 months because the grief was so deep. And she said to me, the more you love, the deeper you grieve. And for some reason that resonated with me, and it made it feel better for whatever reason. The day after, the other thing that I did was, again, I thought of hospice, but I didn't even know how to do anything. I didn't know how to, I wasn't in my right mind. But I remember calling or texting Jill Castro, and I called up all the women that went before me. Christina Songer, anyone who had lost a partner, because I didn't know what to do, and they told me exactly what to do. Nothing. I can hear you. I can see you. I can support you. I remember Jill texting that. And that was the thing that got me through. All these women who had lost Jessica had all lost and didn't have to say anything. There's no way they're going to take away the pain. It's just they're there with you, witnessing it. I also read this book called Plan B. And Plan B was written by the CFO, Sheryl Sandberg. And her husband passed away suddenly. And there was one part in that book that really hit me, because everyone was giving me these books like, when your soulmate dies. I'm like, dude, he's dead. I don't need that book. I don't want to read that. So that was very sweet of people, but I don't want that. So in this book it said, acute grief becomes chronic after 6 months. And I thought, if I'm going to do this, if I'm going to feel like this for the rest of my life, everything that John gave me will be wasted. I'm going to have to figure out a way to go on. And I wouldn't do that to Ella because I wanted to show her the resilience of someone who passes away. It does not end your life. So I started going to therapy, and my therapist, I would go in and say all the time, why me? Why did this happen? And she's so great. She looked at me and she goes, why not? This happens all the time. Why do you think you're not special? So that was like a slap in the face. And it helped me to get to that next level of, okay, what am I gonna do? So I kind of got out of the whole grief thing, although it's always with me. I started traveling, and I started doing whatever the hell I wanted to, which is horrible, because it's very empty. Thanks, honey. You don't like to watch me use my finger to do my nose, like I totally didn't know what to do. I do it on my sleeve. And it got to the point after a few months where I was like traveling, drinking, doing the most, what I thought was great, and it just turned out to be incredibly empty, especially for my being who wants to be in service. So I started thinking about our story, because I had to do it because he said at the end. It took about 3 years, and I met, the woman who I have collaborated with is Sarah Abrams. We've known each other forever. John had this love for her. It was weird, but I'm not a weird that weird. If it is that weird, then we need to really talk about that, because I wasn't seeing her hurt or honored. And so this is my last chapter. This is being honored. So Sarah and I got together, and I said, I have to do this thing, because she knew the story about John and asking about, doing our story. And I just didn't really know how to do it. And she got together with me, and within, it did take a couple of years. But we figured out how to do our story, which is a place for people to deposit their stories, exactly what he wanted in 2009. And we have made that our business, and we didn't know what to do with a nonprofit, so we made something called the Starfish Connection. And just hang with it, because I hate that starfish word. Do you guys know that starfish poem? It's the dumbest poem I've ever heard in my life. It was his favorite poem, and I had to read it at his memorial. And it's about this starfish and kind of creepy stuff. And we were trying to figure out how to make a starfish glamorous so we could kind of sell it. This is what we're going for. And we figured out it eats and it, poops out of the same hole. I'm like, that's not attractive. That's not starfish. We thought it was like a happy, cute thing. Nothing about it. But anyway, now it's a starfish connection. But what the whole point of that poem was is to touch someone, one person makes a difference. John gave me $5,000 without any kind of ties when I was trying to leave a hard situation. It changed my life. The Starfish Connection that we've created gives gap grants. And we partnered, thank God, with Hospice, because I know that people cannot afford funerals. They can't afford just common decency. So what we do is we give one-time grants to people that are in need. And all of this is in John's honor. This is in his name. And it's like this clearing of doing exactly what he wanted me to do. And he guides me. He's never come to me because I told him I don't want to see him. But he has given me my life, my new life. And so when people come up to me and they're like, oh, how are you doing? You look so good. And I'm like, well, thank you, because I do a lot of work on my face, number one. Number two, I am good. In fact, I'm doing things that I would never have done if John was alive because we were distracting each other. So his gift to me was his sacrifice, his trust in me that I would be a good steward for what he wanted, and his love of honoring and seeing me and just helping me become more authentic. So our logo for our story is to be seen, to be heard, to be honored. And for that, I am grateful for all of you to be here to witness me and hold me while I'm telling you this. I really appreciate it. This was hard to write, it's hard to relive, but just to look at all of you and your support, I appreciate that, and thank God for Hospice. Thank you so much.